from the studios of Town Square Media in Northfield, it's Hurley in the Morning on WPG Talk Radio 1450 and WPG1450.com.
Hey, thanks very much. Welcome back to the program. Third quarter action begins right now. This program, which we do every single Tuesday morning at 8:05, is brought to us by Chuck Malamut, our official financial advisor to the Hurley in the Morning program. And on July 1st, we will begin our 25th year together. The information, views, and opinions expressed on this broadcast are those of Chuck Malamut and do not necessarily reflect those of Morgan Stanley or its affiliates. They are current as of the date of this broadcast and are subject to change without notice. Neither the information provided nor any opinion expressed herein constitutes a solicitation for the purchase or sale of any security. This presentation is for informational purposes only. Morgan Stanley Smith Barney, member SIPC. Chuck, welcome to the program. And before we get into the splendor of all the great financial news that you're going to share, I just want to give you an idea, Chuck, that your fabulous support of the past, well, it goes back decades, but the past 8 years of the Hurley in the Morning charity. This week, we're going to be able to give, just for starters, over $34,000 in grants to the Shore Medical Center Foundation, to the John R. Elliott Hero Campaign for designated drivers, Cookie Tills, a work-in-progress charity, Hometown Heroes, Mike Schwartz and their great team. That's $20,000 just between them. We gave yesterday a very nice four-figure grant to the Tara Miller Melanoma Foundation. We gave a very, very nice four-figure grant. These are all four-figure grants to the Philadelphia Broadcasters because they're doing great work with scholarships, archival projects that keeps audio forever as opposed to the degrading tapes and things that they could be erased at any moment because of heat, because of getting too close to a magnet. So they have an incredible archival project, both in video and audio, that the Philadelphia Broadcasters are doing. And when the dust settles, that's something I want to talk to Paul Rotella about, because I think we need a whole archival section of the New Jersey Broadcasters where we ask people, like they aggressively do with the Philadelphia Broadcasters, to bring in your video VHS tapes, beta tapes, reel-to-reel type tapes, cassette tapes, all these things that are not digitized, so that we don't lose some of the great things that have happened in New Jersey broadcasting history. We're going to be giving a four-figure grant to the Atlantic City Sandpipers, Pipes and Drums. There's one I'm keeping a surprise for just a little while longer. Atlantic City High School Hall of Fame, we've already given a contribution to. Faces for Autism, they're going to receive a very nice four-figure contribution. The Fund for Cape May, Absecon Presbyterian Church, Greater Atlantic City Concierge Association, Holy Spirit High School. We have another big surprise that's going to happen 2 o'clock this afternoon that we're going to let everybody know about later today, definitely by tomorrow morning when we have a special guest that's going to be with us at 7:35. We have a very exciting Hurley in the Morning charity announcement, and that's just some of those, Chuck, that we've been able to provide grants to because of great supporters like you.
Harry, thank you. It was really nice to be part of the Harry Hurley tour last week.
It was a great week.
I felt like I spent more time out of the office than in the office, and every activity I went to was something. Either the New Jersey Broadcasters Association, Paul was kind enough to invite me to the board meeting, your lunch, your golf, and then we had the street that everybody has.
It was a great week.
But I'm looking forward to July 1st. That's the next. Is when you go back on the road.
It's my Summer to Remember tour.
So,
yeah, we'll be back out on the road on July 1st.
But no, seriously speaking, as I said to you on Friday, it's Harry. We've known each other an awfully long time, and as we were kind of teasing you this morning in front of with Mike Rubel, your boss, who does a great job as well. Harry 100 is definitely Harry 100. There's no doubt about it. And
Heavy 100.
Yeah, Heavy 100. Well, yeah, you are.
No, we're talking.
I remember we were thin way back when, but
I still am.
Age has kind of caught up with us, I think, a little bit. And that's okay. It's all right. It's part of life.
I liked everything you were talking about until the last 10 seconds.
That's all right, Harry. There's
more of me to love.
Absolutely. I mean, Margie doesn't seem to mind, and that's all good. And
hey, listen, you're overstating my El Gordissimo status. All I know is I stand from 4 o'clock in the morning until 10:06. I don't even sit down. That alone is keeping me fine-tuned, svelte, and extremely.
We'll use the fine-tuned is good, and I think we'll stop right there. No. Fit, okay. Svelte, I'm not so sure about, but that's okay. I'm not.
Hey, it's radio. It's theater of the mind.
Hey, listen, I'm right with you, so we're good.
I will tell you that I had a full workup done in the past 30 days, and I checked out to be absolutely, I mean, right on, Chuck.
That's good for the Harry Hurley lovers. For the Harry Hurley not lovers, they're probably not happy to hear that. But I'm glad that, Harry, you had a
magical week,
a stellar report, and well, I know it had to be extremely stressful. You don't show it, which is great. Everybody at the golf, and at the lunch felt comfortable. And it's just you look at how things have evolved over the past 25 years. I remember walking out of WFPG on Atlantic Avenue, looking to my left, looking to my right, and literally walking as fast as I could to my car because I was just afraid that somebody was out there.
You wanted to make sure you got out alive.
So you think about how the show has, has matured over those 25 years, and so I mean, wonderful job.
So,
great
are
for
you
the
saying
community.
that Harry Hurley, the early years, just a little bit uncivilized? What are you
maybe
saying?
Just a little bit over the top, and. But it was certainly very entertaining. There's no doubt about it. You were sitting at home or in your car, riveted, just waiting for the next the Hurley Bird specials, right?
Oh, boy, did I love them!
And I'm glad that I was never the recipient of one of those calls because I can't imagine.
It's kind of interesting. I don't forget that era. I'll never forget it. But I couldn't do that at this stage like I did it then.
Well, the world has changed. There's no doubt about it.
I don't think you could. I don't think you could do what I did.
You would probably get thrown off the airwaves in all likelihood.
You couldn't do it.
But the good news is you worked through all that. Look at what you have now. It's just a wonderful show. I mean, lots of awards. People, tugging at you all the time, asking for to help, and you're very gracious, and you're
I'm a lover,
and you get things done, which is great. Yeah. So we need more of what you do versus a lot of things that we see every day. And I won't get into that because we'll keep this show at a very high energy level, positive reinforcement. How's that sound?
Good opening monologue, Chuck. And again, thank you for all your support because that partial list that we read off, that's what it's all about. We work all year to raise the money so that over the course of the next 2 weeks we can give it all away. Yeah,
I was very disappointed. I was traveling yesterday. I understand you were in the office and made your a very, very nice deposit. I hope your hand doesn't hurt from writing all those checks, though.
Yeah,
can only do a couple at a time.
Yeah, no carpal tunnel syndrome. This is a labor of love writing these checks, and we're going to be giving out a very nice one later today, Chuck, that I'll tell you about privately. And tomorrow we're going to have a really nice interview with a big-time area newsmaker and a partnership that the Hurley in the Morning charity is forging with an extremely prominent and relevant institution, and we'll just say newsmaker, and tomorrow we'll let the cat out of the bag. But there's a lot of really good things happening. And, Chuck, that's what happens when you bring a lot of good people together and everybody for a common cause, and that is to raise money for much-needed charities. I'll tell you, we're going to do a segment tomorrow morning about real estate because you talk about the third, rung of the stool. The country is having a tremendous real estate resurgence.
They are, absolutely.
Since the best number since 2006. But we're in the most depressed area.
Yeah, as we mentioned New Jersey previously, with the way the laws are written and we were so far behind states like Arizona, Florida, California, Nevada, where the banks were able to clear the foreclosures. With a lot of short sales, they were able to get the squatters out of the respective homes, and then their economy turned. Perfect case in point is if you look at Las Vegas and what has been accomplished, over the last 5-6 years. New Jersey, with the way the laws are written, is a very, very slow moving process to force a foreclosure and ultimately maybe create a short sale and remove the squatters from those properties. So, and then down here, of course, I don't need to repeat because everybody knows because we live it. It's just a very, very sad state of affairs. And I'm hoping that
we lead the nation in foreclosures.
We do, and I'm hoping there's been a fair amount of fanfare up to what's going to be happening this weekend, and that's the playground is opening what we'll describe as Phase 1 with Blatstein and Steelman. I had an opportunity to see the place. I went over there after your lunch last week, and it's just fantastic what they've accomplished. They still have a lot of work to do, and I think your listeners really need to go and support this venue, and I think they'll have a very good time by spending some time in that location.
Chuck, let me bring up something that you can appreciate from the fact that you're long time in the financial services industry. I don't understand why the banks, I get it, they're not going to let somebody that's not paying their mortgage just stay in there and offer just anything to buy the house that they should be paying full price for at some, crazy reduced price. So then this whole process begins. But why do they let it go so long? I mean, I'll give you an example. Right down the street from us, about a mile or so, this wonderful little rancher, this beautiful family was just having a little bit of trouble. They really wanted to stay. The bank wouldn't do a workout. They wanted maybe a payment or two to put on the back end. They wouldn't do it. So what happens? They let this thing go the ugly, hideous route of foreclosure, short sale, and they take forever before you can even close. So then all the copper is stripped out of the place. They take everything that's anything. The place just gets completely ruined. We know this. The bank doesn't want the property. Why do they let it go?
I think what happens,
the point where it's worth less than if they just made an early, responsible deal. I
think what happens, Harry, all of these potential foreclosures get queued up into the system, and there are so many that the bank has to work through, and they basically start at the top and they work through the list. I do know of some services that are out there where the banks hire people, hire companies, I should say, to go out and visit these locations, usually on every 4 to 6 weeks, where they take pictures of the property.
Yeah, but what happens in between a month or 6 weeks.
They do a quick run through, make sure everything hopefully is intact. Hopefully, no one is in the property, in the house at the time. But it's a matter of.
I watched a house that people would have stayed in and actually paid reasonably, and the bank would have made more money and had a property that was in pristine condition. Instead, they do their hardcore route, and I understand. You can't. It's a money thing. You can't just let somebody stay for nothing when they made an obligation to pay a certain amount each month, and then they can't because of lost income and lost jobs and things. But I just think about the logic of letting a property get completely destroyed.
Harry, I think when you look at the numbers that pile up, and the list just gets so long, and unfortunately, it is a process.
So let's be honest.
And you have to.
It becomes. It's not an animate object where you care about people. It becomes just a piece, an asset on a balance sheet.
That's basically correct. And unfortunately, it really is not an asset, because if you
depreciating asset.
Create a short sale,
right?
And the definition of a short sale, then who's going to get hurt at the end of the day? So
the bank's going to get hurt.
So the bank is trying to clear the foreclosures, in New Jersey, and unfortunately we see it more here than we do in North Jersey.
Frank Dallas in his department did the busiest sheriff's department on the planet.
More of a vibrant economy up north. We talk about North Jersey, South Jersey. We talk about gaming in North Jersey versus South Jersey. So you have there's a lot of work that needs to be done. But I will tell you, Harry, I was very, very pleased with the service levels that we experienced at Caesars the other day. I was
fantastic.
I kind of said to myself, it's really nice to see that a property can perform in spite of all the financial ills that they're going through. And I made it clear, and I think you would agree that Gary Loveman just did not do a good job running that organization, and now. Now the organization is basically totally upside down and trying to, reinvent itself. So hopefully, the work they're doing along the boardwalk will, in fact, help the boardwalk. And like I said, kind of go full circle here. I think this weekend is a big weekend, for Atlantic City moving forward into the next phase.
No doubt. Let me make a comment about Caesars because we were there last June, same exact sort of time frame. Middle of the week, Wednesday, Thursday, in that third week of June or thereabouts. And I didn't see any degradation in terms of the upkeep of the property or the level of service that was being provided. And I'm going to tell you something. I think you'll agree with this, Chuck. I don't know if you went down by the front desk. I did because I stayed overnight. Oh, my gosh. It was booming.
It's busy.
I mean, oh
busy.
My gosh,
there was
busy.
No doubt about it.
But I needed a bellman to get the heck out of there because I had to get on Thursday night at around 5 o'clock.
You had to get all those trophies, right?
I had more than I could carry, Chuck, as you know, and I thank you for being there. One of them's here on display in the lobby, as a matter of fact.
I would have helped you, but I probably would have hurt myself carrying them all.
They were heavy. Paul Rotella does it right. I think you'll agree. But the property looked good. It was clean. The service level was excellent. Everybody said it. I haven't talked to anybody that didn't agree. The meal at our banquet, about 500 people at the luncheon, the meal was fantastic.
Yeah, absolutely. So, good segue into, we talked about Atlantic City. Just the opposite of what's happening in Atlantic City is the fact that the market, continues to, again, get that Rodney Dangerfield no respect. We look at last week, the indices were up ever so slightly. The big V word is back, and we had a nice positive day yesterday, and looks like today will open up on a positive note. But volatility, the big V word, is back, and we've had a pretty narrow trading range over the year. We're up, I'm going to call it about 4.5% on the S&P, including yesterday. You would think that if we stayed on that pace at the end of the year, we would get to that high single-digit, low double-digit return. As I mentioned on previous shows, Harry, the international markets, continue to get a lot of attention. There's, again, you ever feel like, I think we've talked about it, it's sort of like Groundhog Day. Now we're back with Greece.
But isn't Greece being worked out?
Well, there's a June 30th deadline, and it seems to be working out. But at this point in time, if you compare to where Greece was several years ago, the dynamics are a whole lot different. We believe that the risk at this point in time is of them defaulting has pretty much been reduced to close to zero.
And that's why the markets liked it yesterday.
Yeah, I mean, quantitative easing, has been somewhat of an assistance, to all that volatility over there that is happening, particularly in Greece. The odds of them leaving the Eurozone seem to be fairly low at this point in time. But there will be more capital controls that will be put in place, and they have to be put in place, because if you think about what has happened every time this, over the last several years this happened, constraints have been placed, and it seems as if the leaders, just and the citizens just sort of ignore, what is happening. I think the average retirement age, and forgetting broadcasting because I heard you and Kirk talking about it yesterday, but the average retirement age, I want to say, is please don't quote me on this, 56.8 years, I think I saw.
Yes.
And now there was a discussion that needs to be expanded, to like 58 or 59 or maybe even 60. So the problem that we have right now, the resolution that will be put in place is going to require, some of the politicians obviously making some changes to the way they operate. The creditors that are out there are going to, in all likelihood, because they're basically in control, are going to put some sort of debt restructuring in place so this June 30th deadline can be met, and then they have another deadline shortly after that. So when you watch and you listen, and the fact that Greece doesn't have a big percentage of GDP obviously helps. But the big fear is if they went to their own currency, they went back to their own currency, it would probably be, I can't imagine, be worth much of anything. They would probably have some fairly high inflation to deal with. And it's not so much Greece, Harry. If you remember what happens with these other countries, are they better off, trying to depart from the Eurozone? Countries like Italy and Spain and Portugal. I think that's what really Germany is really most concerned about, since they are, they are the lead country there, no doubt about it, and they want to make absolutely certain that they can keep sort of all these countries together and keep the euro as one currency instead of having these multiple currencies that we had years ago.
Chuck, in terms of second quarter, which we're really right around the corner, basically 1 week from today, will be the end of the second quarter. How important, based on what happened in the first quarter, do you believe that second quarter earnings will be?
Well, Harry, second quarter earnings. Let me back up. First quarter earnings, as you remember, were downgraded, reduced fairly significantly as we got into earnings season, and as expected, most companies got to their number. A lot of them beat the number. Again, a shortfall on the revenue side, oftentimes, but being able to operate a well-defined, tuned machine, I guess is the best way to put it. The earnings per share, most companies were able to make it and beat it somewhat. So, second quarter earnings look to be in line with current estimates. We have talked about, I don't know how many times. And I kind of chuckle because I know what you're thinking about. The labor market is starting to get fairly firm. And
you're hilarious. You're hilarious. I guess that's true when you make it nationally. Yes. You're making a national statement.
It is. So what is thank you, Harry, for I didn't know I was a comedian, but I'll take it. Yeah. So if you look at, let's start with what the Fed said last week, and then we'll get into earnings for a minute. So they said in their statement, and the market liked it for the most part, that they've seen several improvements within the economy, mostly in the labor markets. So what has happened, again, you talked about that three-legged stool as we started, today's discussion. So consumer spending, housing, as you mentioned earlier, both favorable trends nationally speaking. In spite of what we just identified, there is still some weakness, Harry, in businesses with respect to their fixed income investments, like buying property, buying equipment, for the respective businesses and exports. So what is happening is that we think that there's going to have this debate that's going to be ongoing with respect to rate hikes, or rate hikes. The majority of the economists that follow the Fed seem to think at this point in time, and they've been wrong. They've been wrong a lot. They've been wrong more than they've been right, because they called for rate hikes for almost 2 years now. It'll probably start in September. The minority think December, and the very, very small piece, maybe less than 5% think it's not going to happen at all. And
I'm in the small piece.
And if they come, the question is, do they come once or do they come multiple times? Starting in the latter part of this year.
And it's also a fair question, when is it safe to do it? When is the right time to do it?
Yeah, I mean, good point. I mean, the question is that you still have conflicting reports that we look at. And wouldn't you, like, say you were on this Federal Open Market Committee. They met in April, they're going to meet again, and they look at these things. If you are seeing contraction and no growth, if you're seeing still issues in the economy, would you hold off with a rate hike? I would. Well, Harry,
but
I think
you can't forever.
You can't forever, and I think the economy is certainly in a better state now than it was 6 months ago, 12 months ago. But what kind of state will we be in? And we got to get a break in. We can come back and talk about this after the break. What kind of state will we be in if we start to raise interest rates? I don't think, Harry, that you're going to have this. I don't think this is going to be a major impact. The question is if it goes like a stair step, up.
Well, I think 25 basis points. I
mean, the market has already. I mean, that is already baked in. So is it whether it's 25, maybe 50? I mean, the question is when you're going 200, 300, 400 basis points, then we have something to talk about. But I think at this point in time, Harry, with all projections as to where our economy is going, I think a 25 basis point is going to be a yawner. I think there's concern if you don't make the hike at some point in time, because then they're saying, okay, if you are so concerned about the economy, then maybe things aren't as good as the world is looking at it right now.
Brief time out. He is Chuck Malamut, the official financial advisor to the Hurley in the Morning program. Chuck heads up his group, the Malamut Group, at Morgan Stanley's Northfield office. 609-383-2010 is the phone number. Folks are holding. No phone calls this half hour. I don't want you to hold for no reason. No phone calls this hour. We'll take some phone calls if you'd like in the final 10 minutes of the hour. And then we have Dr. Bob Zlotnick. He has the president of Seabrook House with him during his program today. Bob Zlotnick is the president and the chief executive officer of Atlantic Prevention Resources. Ed Deal is the president of Seabrook House. We'll be back with Chuck in just a moment. Don't go away. Hey, thanks very much. Again, Chuck Malamut, our official financial advisor. He is the head of the Malamut Group at Morgan Stanley's Northfield office. 609-383-2010 for all of your financial planning needs. Chuck, I want to hit this Federal Open Market Committee that will meet. That's the Fed. That Yellen chairs it, and so on and so forth. Do they feel? How do I put this? I sense that they feel. If this was the movie with Tom Cruise and Anthony Edwards, Top Gun, they feel the need. They feel the need for speed. I won't break into song, but I could. I think they are just almost have just an insatiable appetite to want to begin the process of raising interest rates.
Well, Harry, it's not so much that they want. I mean, they want to. It's a matter of they need to. And if you think about, let's kind of go back in time here to 2008 and 2009, where it was where the Fed came in and they assisted. They assisted with a zero interest rate policy. They assisted with TARP. Remember TARP?
Of course, toxic assets and all that. Yeah,
where all the big banks were brought together over that weekend
and made to take money.
And the Fed said, "You will."
Some of them didn't want it.
Well,
it was hysterical.
It's not that they needed. I mean, they needed to shore up their balance sheets, and I know that the world and a lot of your listeners weren't terribly in favor of that, but it was something that was required at the time for the economy to get back on its feet and on firmer footing. So it's been a long time. A lot of companies have prospered from this very, very low interest rate environment. the problem that it's now a problem of being able to operate under what I'll describe as normal conditions. And if you go back and you look at other economic cycles, and I know that you're not a big fan of the lack of GDP, we'll call it, for any of a number of reasons, but it's we are at the point in time because a lot of the reports that we're seeing with respect to housing, a lot of reports that we're seeing from earnings, the consumer.
The housing story is a very good one, Chuck.
The consumer, it looks to be back after a very, very difficult first quarter, and a lot of that was because of the weather. So there is the word inflation, Harry, is starting to kind of creep back into everyone's thought process and discussion. So I think it's at the point in time right now where we are all sitting here understanding, believing that, again, albeit not here where we are, but in this country, that things are better than they were several years ago. And it's probably time.
Yeah, although it has happened in a way, a manner, a pace that the Republic has never seen before in history. There has never been, I think you'll agree with this, even as a financial person, not as a political analyst, but there has never been a recovery like this in the history of America.
It has been obviously very, very slow moving. There's been way too much interference from our friends that are south of us, several hundred miles, and we need to take the shackles off, so to speak, in the handcuffs in an effort to get the economy back where it needs to be.
How is the world doing?
Well, Harry, look, if you look, let's put aside what's happening with the Shanghai Stock Exchange for a minute, because as we got into the end of the week, I mean, the market that market was down about 13% for the week, so it was plus 39 after that decline. Had a tough day yesterday, and what is happening is because that's sort of an aberration of the rule because of the Chinese being able to now buy equities, and unfortunately, I've seen some stories that have come across with, remember the ugly word margin. Mm-hmm. A lot of them were buying on margin, and now they're clearly understanding that the way margin works, oftentimes, it doesn't work to an investor's benefit when the market goes the wrong way. So that has been somewhat detrimental. But putting that market aside for a minute, what is happening, Euro stocks, 50 largest stocks in Europe, up about 6% year to date. The FTSE, which is the UK market, is up about 7%. The DAX, which is the Germany market's up about 5.5 to 6. The Italian market's up about 14 to 15. The Nikkei, which is the Japanese market's up about 13.5. So we are clearly the laggard. And what you might think, we've talked about, and it seems like we've talked about it way too much. I'm hoping that your listeners did look at their portfolios and added a little international and reduced their domestic holdings somewhat, because if this Greek show, mm-hmm. I guess is the best way to call it. Remember when we were kids and we took we studied.
Yeah.
And what did we study about Greek? The great philosophers.
Yeah.
And you think about it, sort of like
the Olympics, the philosophers, and now you look at philosophy of governance. And I'm a firm believer it isn't just like Kirk sees Greece's Achilles heel, no pun intended, because Achilles was flying around and running around in Greece. But Kirk sees the Achilles heel of Greece that they are locked in to the euro. He thinks it's a bad situation for them. You think if they went back to their own situation, it would be worse, I sense.
That's correct.
So
I think
you and Kirk have a split decision on that.
Well, no. I think Kirk believes they should be part of the Eurozone?
No.
Oh, he thinks they should be out.
Yeah, opposite of you.
Okay. I think it would be very, very challenging, for that country. There's not – there's not a lot of exports. They are clearly dependent on tourism. That's one of the major industries for them. The collapse of that country, could create tremendous bargains, for tourists. But I think that's not the way you want to think about traveling. But
he thinks as part of that whole euro, they're held back. He thinks they're held back. He explained it very well, but
yeah, unfortunately, I missed that part of the show. I was traveling yesterday. I was, and I heard
it was brilliant.
I heard the beginning, but I couldn't listen to the entire segment. But we all seem to believe, or the consensus believes that this will get worked out. The can, unfortunately, will get kicked down the road. There will be some additional constraints, placed on Greece, and it's a matter of, will they be able to operate with those particular constraints in place? I mean, do you remember, Harry? Remember several years ago where they were wanting to where they taxed swimming pools?
Yes,
and homeowners were basically going out and buying green tarps and covering their pools. Because what the government was doing, they were taking these aerial shots and trying to identify who had a pool and who did not.
Right,
so
they're covering them up.
So and the fact of the matter is, I was reading yesterday, and again, please don't hold me to this because I don't know if this is correct. Only 70% of Greek homeowners that have a mortgage are actually paying the mortgage. So you have a country that is in significant disrepair, that needs a lot of work, and hopefully this time they'll get it. Because I can't imagine, Harry, that this will continue to be tolerated year after year after year. I mean, as we mentioned earlier, it seems like Groundhog Day. We've had these discussions, but the one thing that we're seeing...
Kirk says constraints on Greece by Eurozone says it all. See, I get his point. Mm-hmm. He's talking more free market. This is more control, central sort of government control. And by the way, while you're talking about swimming pools, Chuck, because you are a man that possesses top security clearance, you knew about this last night. Look at that monster I got out of my pool,
I did
Chuck.
see that, Harry. Yeah, I think you're selling now.
I'm a hero. I mean, there were snakes, kids, in my pool, but there's nothing that Pool Boy Hurley cannot attend to.
Again, looking at...
holding up the snake to Chuck.
Harry,
Come on, it's a beast.
It is a beast, Harry.
What would you have done if you had encountered that
probably
snake?
Probably filleted him, had him for dinner.
There you go.
So what happens is that we don't think that the exiting is really realistic at this point in time, economically or politically speaking.
There's a belief they couldn't make it correct.
The polls that have been taken over there, 70% of the citizens of Greece want to retain the euro. They recognize that without that...
But 70% of the people before there was the United States of America wanted to stay under control Britain.
Right. So let me just let me just finish.
Well, I thought that was a very good point.
It was 70% want to retain the euro because they recognize that without the purchasing power, what they're going through probably would even be worse. Greece imports nearly all of its energy needs and close to half of the food that's consumed.
I'm going to tell you how I settle on this whole discussion the past 2 days. Let me squeeze it in. This fits now. Kirk is correct, but you are correct in terms of what's better for our financial markets. It's a shame. See, there's a term I used on this program, Chuck, called cognitive dissonance, where things happen that really are against your self-interest. But on this occasion, I have to agree with Chuck that for the short term and even medium term, that this is better for the world markets, including obviously America, but ultimately being part of this whole socialism scheme that keeps you down and runs things the way sort of like the Affordable Care Act runs health care, it's really not good. Well,
Harry, look, we won't get into the plights that have been created. I think it's more important that, what are the next steps? So, again, they import all their energy. They import half of their food. So you have to be very, very aware of that. So if they dropped if they dropped out of the euro, it might allow them to create, to follow their own political agenda.
Imagine being a sovereign state.
It would do nothing, absolutely nothing for the outstanding debt what has to be paid. And most of that debt is in euros at this point in time. So their new currency, the drachma, would probably be worthless outside of Greece. And essentially inside, I think you'd have a lot of inflation. It would be an IOU to a bankrupt government.
The game is rigged so that they have to stay where they are. That's really what it is.
You'd have, again, high inflation, interest rates would be out of control. And you have that burden of making that external, debt repayment even more onerous. And so what happens is bank deposits will be seized by creditors and the shareholders. So, and a bankrupt Greek government might be unable to obviously honor bank deposit and insurance claims. So you think about it, how it goes full circle. I don't disagree with Kirk or you to a certain extent, but I think
it's one of these occasions where he's right, he is right, and you are right. You are right in the terms of the traditional way that this would shake out. It would be bad for our stock market. It would be bad for world markets. Them being in, unfortunately, because of the way the game is played, is better than them being out. And even it's better for them because they would really, all the benefits of being sovereign would be avalanched by the economics.
Yeah, I think what it gets down to, Harry, we're at the point in time, like how many times are we going to go back and revisit this? And
you know how many until it's fixed. You've admitted every time you and I have talked about this, it has always been the term kick the can. So when you kick the can, that means you're over here and you've kicked the can somewhere as far as you can down the road. Maybe soon we'll pick it up with a baseball bat and whack it. You try to hit it, 200, 300 feet. And then the problem is you get there again, and then you have to kick the can again. Isn't the reality that someday we're going to have to fix this? If you believe some of the financial, geniuses that are out there, one of them, my former boss Donald Trump, saying that $24 trillion is our tipping point. Chuck, we're getting close to that.
We are. Absolutely.
He believes, the experts that he talks to believe that $24 trillion is the number where basically we cease to exist.
Well, Harry, that can be a discussion.
I know.
For another day. I think we could probably spend a couple sessions on that.
It's a good point. Chuck, thank you until we meet again.
Thank you, Harry.
The following program is presented by Chuck Malamut, a financial advisor at Morgan Stanley. The information, views, and opinions expressed on this broadcast are those of Chuck and do not necessarily reflect those of Morgan Stanley or its affiliates. They are current as of the date of this broadcast and are subject to change without notice. Neither the information provided by Chuck nor any opinion expressed herein constitutes a solicitation for the purchase or sale of any security. This presentation is for informational purposes only. Morgan Stanley Smith Barney, member SIPC. And again, as always, remember, for all of your financial planning needs, turn to Chuck Malamut, our nearly quarter of a century financial advisor here for the Hurley in the Morning program, 609-383-2010. We'll be back in just a couple of minutes. Stay with us.